Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Getting Ready to Bloom, the Future of Art and Education. My name is Suzette Ross, founder and executive director of CPS Lives. CPS Lives is a 501c3 that is a residency that gets Chicago artists into the Chicago public schools. I founded the organization almost 4 years ago to shine a light on public school education today. Artists are the best storytellers, and telling the unknown stories of public school is vitally important. Along with me are artistic directors Kendall Hill, who will be introducing tonight's speakers, and Sophia Paget-Perez, who will be moderating the audience questions.
All right. Hi, everyone. So please be sure to send any questions you have for our panelists through the chat functionality of Zoom. Make sure to set the recipient as everyone so that your question will be seen. Tonight, we'll also be sharing images from Marjana Abramic's time with Michelle Clark High School. Also, our silent auction and raffle will be continuing till the end of the panel discussion. So make sure to get any last minute bids in on artist work, travel packages, and all our other exciting items tonight. Now I'll turn it over to Kendall to introduce our speakers.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. We're so excited to have everyone to be able to do this, to close our fundraiser correctly, and to also celebrate some of the great work that everyone's been doing this year. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you our three panelists tonight. The first is Marjana Abrahamic. Marjana was born in Poland, and she grew up in Greece and now lives and works in Chicago, Illinois. She received her MFA in photography from Yale University, and she received her BA in political science and philosophy from Loyola University. Abrahamic is visually inspired by personal histories, attachments to unachievable and necessary survival fantasies to further investigate communal formations and transformations. She is one of our artists who has been working in Michelle Clark for the past couple of years now. And speaking of Michelle Clark, our second panelist is Charles Anderson. And Charles is entering his 4th year as principal on Michelle Clark High School. As a West Sider of Chicago, Charles has seen the community and schools go through various changes. Anderson says a huge key to his success in building a link between the community and Michelle Clark. He says that his key to success is building a link between the community and Michelle Clark. Charles holds a degree from Loyola University in counseling and leadership. And this year, he hopes to work deeper on social, emotional support for students, staff, and community while showing growth academically as well, too. And last but not least, the man who needs no introduction, I would like to introduce Tony Carman. Tony has been an active in the civic, business, and cultural communities of Chicago for nearly 40 years now. Working in select institutions, associations, government organizations, producers of special events and corporations, he's guided numerous projects from concept to conclusion throughout Chicago and throughout the world. Currently, he is the president and director of Expo Chicago, the international exposition of contemporary and modern art at Navy Pier. He founded the exposition in 2012.
All right. I will start off with a pretty big and broad question, but how has the pandemic affected you as artists, educators, and community leaders? Charles, do you want to start?
Sure. So good evening, everyone. Wow, you're right. It is a big question, but what I will say is, of course, it affected us in so many ways, not being able to touch, not being able to talk, not being able to reach out. But from an education point of view, it literally, because we're a school that touches when you're in the building, I'm able to grab you, I'm able to help you. It literally became like a wall that shut me and the school from being able to support anything that our families, our students, and even our staff needed. We just became isolated, and doing that part, we then had to start figuring out how to regroup. So yes, it was devastating just to not be able to hear the cry or touch the cry or reach that cry.
Marzena, how did you work as an artist with us.
Yes. So for me, in my career as an artist educator, my expectations from art are constantly shifting. When I think about photography and what photography can do for us, I think about how it can be used as an artistic expression, or like recently a tool to find water on Mars. And if we find water, we find life, right? So that's wild. But it can also be used to document our personal lives. And what from what we have seen in the news recently, phone cameras can change the world in a positive way, and it becomes a citizen's weapon in many ways, right? So when I think about photography, I think about that it can be used as a tool for education, whether it's like art or sciences. I think it's really important. And when I think about the future of education and how the pandemic has affected our situation, I think about our students who are the people who are creating our communities, right? They're the ones who are like coming up, the next generation. And I think it's really important for them to see themselves as cultural producers and not only people who are experiencing and consuming culture. So yeah, I think photography is a great starting point in teaching in variety of subjects, but also in empowering students.
Cool. Tony?
Brilliant. I'll answer that in a couple of ways. From a company standpoint, many of you may know Expo Chicago took place for almost 9 years. We were going into our 9th edition every September, and the pandemic forced both two postponements. We are now planning to have the 9th edition in April of 2022. But in the course of those postponements, we did what everyone does, and that's reflect on how you take advantage of those challenges and think about how you're communicating. We would have never thought that, just like all of us doing now, that we could sustain a connection by creating, or embracing the digital platforms. Art fairs, we had to launch 2 online viewing rooms or online platforms, and it's a stopgap. I think we all understand what it means to have a student in a classroom and an individual experience art in person. There's nothing like that. It is what we all need as humans. But in this interim moment, I think we've all found ways to adjust to this virtual climate and look to use that, which is not going away. I appreciate, Marzana, what you said, just about all of us recognizing the power of the cell phone and what it did to change our society, or will hopefully continue to change our society in a positive way, forcing us to look at and be able to capture those ills. I think that we from a business standpoint, I hope that's not inappropriate to say, we're always, or Expo Chicago will always have a digital component connected to our presentations, because we now have to. It's demanded of us. So, I think that in addition to how it affected us to adjust to when we're going to be or how we're going to be, I think we too reflected on many of the issues that arose over the pandemic months, and have incorporated much of the lessons and much of what we wanted to say into what is our future programming. It's not just talking about recognizing DEI issues. It's actually being active and incorporating. And I'm proud that Expo Chicago has, always been on the forefront of programming. But we can do more. And I think that to end, that was a long piece of both digital as well as societal response. I think it's time for us to gather again. We learned that we miss each other in person, and there's a lot to be gained when we regather.
Thanks. So just quickly going back to you, Marzana, some of our artists were not able to work these last year and a half, and but you managed to do it. How did you manage to do it? And what did you?
Well, I ended up just going back to Mr. Anderson at the high school, and he gave me the opportunity to just roam around and photograph whatever I wanted. So I focused more on the environment of the school, thinking about where, you know, what are the things that they see out the window, like that beautiful tree, for example. Yeah, and then there were some students actually that were at the school throughout. I kept seeing, because Mr. Anderson, you were doing meals, right? So the students were coming in, and yeah.
Yeah, I would just add in, we were doing meals. What we did was switched over to now how do we support the community and families. So we became a food site. So every day we fed about 200 families, different meals and so forth. So coming in and taking pictures just added another life for us, because then we were able to share those pictures with students. And you had some students saying, "Oh wow, I remember this," or "I can't wait to get back." But it also gave them the story of hope. The story of hope is that this won't last always, which was so important to me. So coming and taking those pictures, and I love the fact of saying them being able to see outside. Those are things that in some cases they took for granted. We all took for granted. But Marzan coming in, taking those pictures just added a new life and a new layer to everything that we were going through, to bring art in another facet that students didn't necessarily think about. That while things were going chaotic, remember this pleasant piece. Remember, look out the window. It just sent so many messages to our students to help them to even just remember the small things. I think sometimes we get caught up and we forget about the art. Look out the window. Look at the smiles. Let those smiles now come back to you again. So this was those opportunities for us as well.
And also, you guys held election day.
Yeah.
So I was there on election day. I photographed some of the equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, the goal for us was, although we are stricken by the pandemic, how do we still make sure parents, students, and families know that we're still a safe haven for them? And in being a safe haven, I think the beauty was that they still got a chance to see the beauty of the building. And as we continued, we started changing things in the building that you got a chance to take some pictures of, also that we got a chance to share.
Tell them about the graduation last year. I think that was super special, and how that all worked.
So with the graduation, we were like, what do you do? Because most schools were like, oh, you can't have a graduation now. You can't get the students out. And we just decided we would do a drive-by graduation, but it turned into like we're going to block off all the streets. And literally the drive-through became that students got a chance to walk like a complete block to get to the car. So it was, they would get dropped off on one side and then they walked the whole block to get to their car on the second side. So just the fact of them walking, it was almost like walking the quad, when we were in college, but they got a chance to walk the whole building to get to their next level. Just gave them back the pride, because remember, these were students that hadn't seen the building since March. And so we were able to do that. And now you're taking pictures of me. Now you're showing the light. Now you're showing the it just added to the excitement for them, and it didn't leave them feeling like this is not important. It's not about me, and it's not important for me. But we
It was
really
so
tried.
emotional,
Yeah,
right? I
it
mean, there were so
was.
many students crying. Like I also like made some videos. There was so many men crying, and I would ask them like, why are you crying? What are you gonna miss? And they were like, Mr. Anderson and school. I'm gonna miss high school. And it was such an incredible moment to be part of. And I think in many ways as an artist, that's kind of what I live for, is being there and experiencing these real connections that people are having or losing.
And if I can throw one last thing in there, this was now a chance for them to put on their makeup, get their nails done, get their hair done, and come somewhere, because think about it, they really didn't have a reason to celebrate because they have been in the house so long. So this was just an opportunity also for it to be about them, which is one of the things we really wanted to do.
That's wonderful. And Marzena, you want to tell them where the pictures went afterwards?
Oh yeah, we did an installation with BMO Harris. So we printed out the photographs, and they were installed on some of the boarded up buildings downtown.
Yeah, we created something for BMO Harris, and all the kids were able to, and from all of the artists who were able to work last year. And but the graduation pictures were the center, because it was sort of symbolic of what school's all about, is this wonderful graduation, and they were so joyous. It was lovely. So we touched on this a little bit before, but did we talk about silver linings? What are silver linings? Are there any positives besides these wonderful photographs that that we haven't touched on?
I would love to talk about some of the silver linings. Art became a way. So we have a fantastic art teacher that has worked with Marzel very very closely, and art became another way for them. For students, it became art therapy. For students, it became another vantage point for them to look at life, and how to create it through art. And so these were pictures that what students could go back and look, but then they also can go and look and say, where am I now, and what does this look like for me, and create. So as students started coming back, one of the great things we wanted to do was look at how do we support them from the social and emotional standpoint. And art was a major factor that came right into play for that.
I, I may interject. I'm so moved by seeing these photographs. You all have obviously seen these, and they're more than just artistic expression or expressions of an artistic endeavor. It's a real celebration of what it means to be both a student and creative, and celebrating what it means to be together in so many ways. And I think that's a perfect example of how. It's not just a photograph by an artist, it's also a statement of what is important right now. And that's for us to remember how what interaction and what, as I've said before, the serendipity of just running into individual and having a conversation can do to spark something creative or spark an action. And I think that it's a pleasure to see this work as it's a celebration of those moments, but it's also a reminder that very soon we're going to watch what I think is an important flowering when we really are able to do what we used to do, and that's recognize the importance of just connecting and watching the creative process, whether it's for school or whether it's for an artistic or sports endeavor, happen just because of a conversation or alliances or new projects occur just because someone ran into someone and shared that creative spark. And I think that it's exciting for me to see how you touch, all of you from the educational standpoint, touch the future of our society here.
For me, when the pandemic started in March, I had just finished making the sports teams photographs with Justin Schmitz, which these are a collaboration. And it was really exciting to kind of realize that we got it. Like, we brought all this equipment there. We lit, and Mr. Anderson and Miss Emmy gathered all the sports teams, the chess team, and like had a schedule. We did a really big shoot, and for me, it was a really awesome opportunity to also connect with another artist in residency at CPS Lives. And I wanted to observe the dynamics of the sports teams. I love how in sports we're kind of like brought together, and these people are the people that we really value and we love playing with them, but yet we don't really hang out with them outside of school. And also these are the kinds of relationships for me that have taught me as an artist how to win and how to lose. You know, I love winning, but I also love congratulating the other winner, right? Being able to kind of bring somebody else's successes. And so for me, that was a really great reminder how two people can kind of come together and bring in their own ideas about what it's like being on a sports team. But I often felt as a child alienated, and I didn't have a lot of family close to me, so for me my sports teams were really important. And I actually kind of wonder, like, what are these photographs for Justin, because actually Justin had made the photographs of the sports teams while we were together in grad school at Yale, so he already had the formula. He kind of had it down how to light things, and so this was truly a kind of a collaboration of like me saying I want to capture the dynamic of the teams, and you have done this before, so can you come and help me do this? But yeah, I don't know if Justin can speak to what I don't know if he can be taken off mute.
If we can figure it out, we can do that. Or you can
Yes, 1 second. Sorry about that. Let me get Justin in here.
Yeah, and I think the teams are just like such a wonderful place to reconnect with people, and to do the same activity is also really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think hi everyone.
Hey, Justin.
Hey,
Yeah.
Justin.
It's you know, there's this certain level of production value that I sort of thought we could sort of bring to this. And I think that sort of working at another school in CPS, Marjana talked to me about doing this, and it seemed like this really amazing opportunity to sort of do what I think a lot of this residency is about, which is, yeah, like me getting to go in and making the pictures that I want to make, but also sort of like realizing that there is a community at the school who wants these pictures. And so like being able to sort of offer like a skill set that I have, like brings, you know, me and Marjana closer to that community. And then hopefully these students will have this picture like going forward, and it will be this sort of thing. So it feels like a privilege to be able to offer that as part of,
but also like, hey guys, like we're artists and sports team photographs can be art. Your art, you know?
Right.
Like that's really cool to also like be two people that went to school together, that are friends, that are colleagues, that are in conversation about art in front of all these high school students, and being like, this is what we do and this is how we do it. Two people, huge production, you guys are going to look amazing, and it's going to be a photograph that really connects you know, the teammates.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I would also throw in there too is that as I look at all the pictures, because of course I know every student, their face tells a different story, and it's a story from each one, from conquering to I'm working through this. It just, and once again, because I know them all, it just adds another layer for me that I'm like, they're proud. To see those things stand up makes it just that much greater in the picture. And the way that the lighting is, that, I had to keep saying, wait, where are they again? I kept forgetting you guys were in the gym.
Well, I think it's a wonderful collaboration between the artists and the students, for sure. And I also think it's a way for the students to see artists at work and see what they do, and to see professionals that might not come into the school often or into their lives, to see that this is an avenue that they could pursue if they're interested.
And it's also us becoming a moment in memory within them, because a lot of us remember, through photographs, right? So there's these big events that happen, like graduation, and then you remember your graduation through those photographs. And I love thinking that like Justin and I and CPS Lives will be with the students through these photographs throughout their lives, and that's how they're going to remember through my and Justin's aesthetic, right? Like the way that we decided to light it and the way that we decided to like represent that moment for them. It's also really amazing.
I think that's really great. So I just want to, here's another question for you guys. Now that we're getting the vaccines and everything's becoming more accessible, how do you think you're going to open up? How do you think things are going to look next year, next fall?
So
You know,
I'll go ahead.
no, Charles, please go ahead. That's great.
I was just gonna say, I'm looking forward to creating what that's gonna look like without being told what it's gonna look like. I'm one of those that love to figure out how can we make this pudding into something great. How can we take these two loaves of bread and make a great sandwich? And I think that if we try to go into enough people being vaccinated, us starting, we have to now say we can't go back to the normal way. How do we now add more creativity, more collaboration, and how do we continue to use both things that we've learned, the technology piece and the human action that we missed? How do we now integrate those two different things? Like I've heard people say, well, one thing we know is that we'll never have another snow day because there's no reason to have a snow day. Just take the computer home and let's go work. But when I think about that, I also think about how now do we create minds that are not just centered on I have to sit in this classroom in order to learn about what's going on in Mars or what's going on with riots, what's going on with racial equality. How can I now become a part of that? And how do I learn to use my voice for that? So I think um, as Marzai said, the phone, how do I use my phone to make a difference in what's going on? How do I now use my computer to write about it? And so I think that as we start moving into like what the next years will look like, it's going to take creative people. And I think and I think people that are in the arts are very creative because you can take a picture and see it from various vantage points. But I think that if we get people that are trying to just do the same old, let's get back to normal, we'll never advance further from where we are. So I'm excited about the work that technology and art collaborating together, the changes that it'll make for our world and growth for our students.
Yeah, Charles, that's such a wonderful thing coming from an educator and from someone that is deep in touching, as I said earlier, the future of our society and those that are going to continue to make change. I said it earlier. I think what is going to happen is, and I keep using this word serendipity. We're all going to revel in that opportunity to just connect again and connect in places, connect in museums or galleries, as long as we're in speaking about the arts, or at an art fair, not just at a restaurant or at the school, but in those moments, I think that we're going to take the tools and the lessons that we've learned over the last year. And I really, I remain incredibly optimistic about those tools being used in a positive, creative way. We can't. There's a lot of things to correct, and there's a lot of work to be done. But outside of the work to be done and things to correct, there's a lot of beauty to create. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned as it relates to how an individual can be exposed to two photographers doing extraordinary work as a possibility of a career, or or if you're pursuing your basketball career, but have a love of photography, you might find that creative experience always being expressed in other ways. And I think that, this is nothing new. It's just that these, when we gather, I think we're all going to I think we're going to be using the tools of gathering together in a profound way. I hope.
I think so.
Well, I look forward to going back to Expo and running into people from, all over, whether it's my friends from New York or LA. It's always an awesome, 3-day event that you get to look at art and kind of have these serendipitous moments where you run into people and you're like, oh yeah, let's go talk about, let's get some food. And within my artistic practice, I hope to continue to focus and point towards this great experience of having a greater sense of purpose that has changed us, and how important our relationships are, our friendships, whether it's being a teammate or part of a graduating class. Those are the central themes of my work, and in some ways I think they have intensified with COVID. So I really want to continue to investigate and document those relationships.
I wanted to add, just for why we're here, Expo Chicago is deeply proud of the partnership with CPS Lives and the mission and the work, and that will always continue. And so, Marzena, as you said, we hope to go back to that place where we collaborate with the organization and have a booth again at the fair. But at that moment, make sure that the youth of Chicago and those that come in from around the world do what they always do at art fairs, and that's be exposed to, extraordinary provocative work. Provocative can be beauty, provocative can be mission, provocative can be, just emotive in experience. It can be so many things, and that's the altruistic profound impact of what I do or what the art fair is. And we're deeply proud to be able to coordinate not just the booth, but collaborate with CPS Lives to further your mission and to make sure that that door to creativity is always open and exposed. So I'm proud of, I wanted to be able to say that, and proud of the mission that you pursue.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I think you guys, the expo and your fair are definitely sort of the epicenter of sort of the Chicago art community getting together and reaching out to the greater community of Chicago. It was great when Charles came and saw his portrait up in the booth earlier a couple of years ago, and I think it was wonderful for people who didn't think that they knew about art could see their principal or see their colleague up and as art, because art and life are very intertwined. So thank you all very much. I think we're now at the sort of questions section. We're going to open it up to people, but if you guys have any questions for each other, feel free to do that now. And Sophia will be taking over and moderating the chat.
I'm going to take this minute. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, go.
Sophia, I was going to, I think it's important. This is a question to Charles, actually, as it relates to your role in the school. Do you find that what we've been talking about, that yearning for students to be together again and in person, and do you feel positive as an educator as it relates to what the next few months will be as the future of our city gathers together again?
I think that I feel good about it. I feel like we just got to continue to push that education about vaccinations and why it's so important. And now that we have, Pfizer to help with down in the age for students, How do we now make sure that becomes just that much available? But it's going to come through education. And so I think a lot of that will come from what we can do from the school system as well to help educate, and then the availability that we can make for students. But I think what it would do is the more that we can get vaccinated when this summer hits and we are starting to open up, I think the less fearful you can be, because the summer could go one way or the other. And upon the return of schools in September, that could go one way or the other based off what happens with the summer. So I think now is the time to really just continue to push that out, and look for ways to educate our students on it and educate our parents and our communities on it, so that we can then move smoother on the return.
That's great. Sophia?
All right. Hi, everyone. So Robert Lee has a question for Marjana. What was the most impactful photo that you have taken during the pandemic?
I would say the graduation photographs were the most impactful, because of the level of emotion. I've never, I mean, I remember my graduation being like, oh yeah, cool. Same with college, same with grad school. But I think the fact that the students hadn't seen each other, they hadn't seen Mr. Anderson. And I think for me, it's extra special because Mr. Anderson is such a cool principal that everybody is like, they see him and they just melt and they start crying. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. So I think those graduation photographs were, I mean, I cried too, but it was also awesome to see, there was a student who was like alone. She didn't have her mother or her father, and was crying because this moment she could only share with Mr. Anderson and her other teachers, So there was a student with like a 2-month-old baby. That was amazing to photograph, and it was really, really powerful to see how much students wanted to participate in this event, and I think for me, that was empowering even in my classroom, at the School of the Art Institute, that my role as an educator is to encourage my students towards embodying their role as Chicago artists who participate in conversation about what's happening today and what's happening within their personal lives, but also having a conversation what's happening within the art world. And I think, again, like that's where Expo comes in, right? We talk about these things in the classroom, and what happens in the classroom is really important, but it's also really important for them to have a place to like go and experience the world that's being made into art. So yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Thank you for reminding me that.
And then just as a quick reminder, once the panel ends, our fundraiser and auction and raffles will also be ending. So be sure to place your last bids. And then this question is for Charles. How do you feel your school weathered the pandemic as compared to others in the CPS network? Better or worse?
I think we all had our different. So let me start with here. I wouldn't compare it because we all have different spots that we do well in, and others that someone. But I will say that as far as weathering, we did a lot as other schools did in going out and trying to find students. That became like really important to us, that we at least, as my grandma used to say to me, she would say, I just need you to come by here, boy, because I need to lay eyes on you. And I never knew what that meant. I mean, I was like, why do you need to lay eyes on me? What do you mean? And I literally felt like my grandma at times. So, like, if you look at even some of our videos, we went to houses to lay eyes on them. It just wasn't enough for us to hear them or to see them online. Some kids I just needed to lay eyes on, or had to have my staff lay eyes on to feel better about what was going on.
Wow.
So I wouldn't compare. I think we all did what we can do in the crises, but I will say we did a lot to make sure that any student that we could find or didn't find, that we some kind of way made them feel like they were missed, that they were loved. I mean, we even bought just little trinkets and boxes to have a reason to come over, you know. Um, so we would use those things. Hey, we came, we brought you a keychain. That's the only reason why we were stopping by. But little things just to make them feel that they weren't forgotten. And the thing I've been saying now to a lot of people is you matter, your love matters, your presence matter. Because I need our students and our staff to understand that all of those things matter for us.
Thank you. And then this question is for anybody from actually one of our current CPS Lives artists, Mia Capodelupo. How have ways of working and creating during COVID changed your art/business practices going forward? Maybe Tony, you want to start us off with that one?
I mean, it's kind of where I started. It forced us to rethink so many of the systems that we had in place, and rethink what we wanted to be in the future. And I think that that's a, you know, I think it's important, even if you take that down to what it means to be a student in a school, to always be able to not just reflect in crisis, but reflect in any moment, and not be afraid to make some significant changes. And we've made significant changes, not just in staffing, but how we want to pursue, the next edition of Expo Chicago, what other programs we want to launch. And we sort of embrace as I say, embrace the opportunity and the challenge. And I think in life, I think it's important to remember that you don't have to just pivot into crisis. You can pivot even in the most safest of points in your life, and not be afraid to look forward. So for Expo Chicago, we've taken this time to be reflective, and hopefully what will come from that reflection and creativity is a number of new initiatives that we hope will continue to serve not just the exhibitors, but the patrons and the students, and Chicago and the world at large that comes.
Marjana or Charles, the question again was, how have ways of working and creating during COVID changed your art/business practices going forward?
It hasn't really changed my art as much. Perhaps I had a little more time to reflect upon it and see how important some of the photographs that I made, and how much I want to continue to make those photographs. But I've thought about 10 different ways on how I can ask Justin to do those sports teams again.
Great.
Well, he kind of heard you now, so he knows it's coming. The question.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So let me stand in line with you, Justin. We need you back. But I would add also in there is that it once again has caused me to think about how do I make sure the staff um, are prepared through professional development and teachings and conversations. How are we prepared to deal with this next level of students? Because the students are no longer the same students that sit behind a desk and move from class. They're now different. So how do we not only make it creative enough for them, but we also have to make it intriguing enough that they want to come every day, or they want to be a part of whatever we craft. So with teachers, the thinking has been, how do we change your classroom? How do we flip it? Maybe you really didn't need these desks anyway. Maybe the kids could actually be some other places and be taking pictures of where they are and discussing it with the classroom, because they can show it right on the slide. But they can be in other parts of the building. How do they write stories? So all of those things are parts of where I'm thinking that we will go as it relates to making sure students still get a quality education, but they have to also be able to bring in the things that they've lived as well.
Also, I think this time has given us a moment to reflect how perhaps our relationships with each other are much more important, and how art actually focuses on the real, whereas brands and commercial things focus on you know, the artificial to say, and how material things are not as important as making art and connecting with other people.
And this next question is for Tony. How do you believe Expo Chicago is educational and informative to the larger arts community of Chicago and the United States, and probably also the world?
You know, I mean, there's so many facets to an art fair, and I'm not, you know, I say this not because I'm connected to one, but I'm made aware every year of how an art fair feeds a broader ecosystem, both cultural, educational, hospitality in so many ways. And I think that from, you know, from an art fair standpoint, of course, commerce has to take place. But that commerce that has to take place is also supporting the artists around the world that the artwork is being sold and feeding. So in addition to that, to the commerce side of an art fair, I think the opportunity for an individual to walk into an art fair and experience an artist's work from South Africa, and a dialogue about that work from South Africa, or for an individual to experience and be provoked by a work that they would not have ever come across, is the educational part of this. For one and I think that of course we have many talks and dialogues and programs that allow for this discourse to happen in an art fair, which is educational. But I think it's just the sheer act of coming in, experiencing and participating and reveling in what, you know, artists like Marzena, the work that Marzena does, is really the important educational component here. And also showing that there's, you know, outside of just wanting to create, there actually potentially is a vocation there. That if inside you is an absolute need, which obviously is for Marzena to create, that you actually can have a career, not just as an artist, but potentially as an artist and educator and other things. And I think that that's the real educational part of not just an art fair, but I guess a bit of our art fair.
Wait, it's also a great party.
And a good party.
It's a good party. I mean, the opening a couple years back, we had a performance by Nick Cave. That was amazing. You know, you just it's fun. I mean, it's really fun. Yeah, don't forget that.
And then this next question is from Yumi Ross, one of CPS Lives board members. And this is for Tony as well. CPS Lives is original in its mission, but do you know of any other organizations or projects that does work in any way like CPS Lives? Artists telling stories of the schools? If so, might be there a reason for CPS Lives to dialogue with them?
Oh, that's an extraordinary question, and putting me a bit on the spot. It's not necessarily a field that I have a broad scope in. There may be other organizations across the country or the world. I just don't know of anything like what CPS Lives is honestly. And I think the most important thing is it's such a Chicago approach. It's so collaborative and immersive and connective, and fills a need that is just so pure. And I think that I hope that it doesn't sound like I'm dodging the question without knowing all the details of other organizations. But what your organization does is just plays such an important role for our community, but is very much born by a Chicago ethos, I think. And I think it makes me proud, civically proud, that your organization is there to really hold the mirror up and show that arts and creativity, or the creative process, is as important as other parts of the curriculum that a student it needs to learn and grow. And yes, there's arts education programs all over the country, but to embed and to utilize professionals in the way that you do, to embed and let them engage with the students the way you do is unique and deserves to be supported in so many ways.
And also from like an artist's point of view, you know, I know for Justin as well, before we got assigned our schools, we knew exactly what we were going to do. And so that is a really also really, that is also a great opportunity. Otherwise, I wouldn't been able, I've been wanting to photograph in a high school to understand what teenagers are about, how I can connect and understand them. But like I couldn't just go up to Mr. Anderson and do that on my own, right? We have to do the background check and Suzette is, you know, making connections and really doing all the behind the scenes so that I get to the school and I just make pictures and I feel supported as an artist to make pictures and not necessarily to, you know, create like a program for the high school. Like it feels that it's a very great opportunity for me as well.
And I was going to say, going back to the vocational opportunities, I think students need to know that there's, there's a lot of outlets that one can, a lot of roads one can take, and to be able to have a professional come in and create and activate and exchange is a different way to open that door than just teaching someone about a piece of artwork or a book, etc. Of course, that's important. And by the way, I desperately want to go back to school and have you as my principal. I can't. In my generation, I don't think anyone knocked on my door to just to try to find me. But that speaks such volumes of what you are and who you are to your student body. But anyway, I was going to say, to have professionals be able to work in the way they do through CPS Lives and students just is a different way of showing them, the opportunities for creativity, and not just a book, not just a painting in a book about an artist. It's a totally immersive, important way.
You know, one of the things that I will add in that, so as a principal, we do get a lot of programs coming saying, hey, we want to do this for your kids. We want to do this. And some of them are like, hey, we want to help them improve academically. We want to help them write. We want to help them in poetry. But very few come in and do pictures that bring beauty within for students because, you know, so many times, especially in high school, they're at that age where I don't feel pretty. I got bump pimples, or and as you look at the work that was done, none of those students felt like they were ugly to be in the picture. And so that's a whole nother level of self-esteem that CPS Lives bring to Michelle Clark. That everybody is photogenic and beautiful. I mean, like literally, they started with me. I was like, "How did you make me look like this? I look amazing." Uh, and so I remember saying to Suzette, "Can you just follow me around and take pictures, and that just be who I am and not the real me?" And so I think that that's really important. That as adolescents, they're always something that body images and all of those things that take place. So yes, I think the vocation and all of those are great because I think we need to push those. But I think also I'm able now to get up and talk in front of people because I don't feel ugly or I don't feel like I'm not worthy because they're looking at whatever's on my face. And so I think the photographs was a great way that did that without, like, some of the groups we have that come in just kind of says we're going to do girl self-esteem. Well, you can talk to me about it, but when you can show me and I'm like, that's me.
Yeah.
It changes, you know, those pieces that I feel. So I when I talk about groups coming in and coming out, um CPS Live, I mean, and let me just say it's been great for us because our kids have come alive from that.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really great point because I don't retouch any photographs, but when I make photographs, I want to make beautiful photographs. And so I rely on gesture and on light, composition. And I think that's also really what separates art, you know, from commercial work, right? We look to find the authenticity, the real thing within and pull it out and bring it into our work as opposed to bringing in an idea and imposing it onto them, right? So we kind of pull beauty and the real out of them. Yeah. And Justin just knew exactly how to pose, 15 people in a line. And so he kind of focused on posing the bodies, and I focused on moving the face to the light, and so that they looked strong and close, but also beautiful.
All right, I think that's it for the questions.
Well, thank you for participating.
Thank you.
It's really been a wonderful thing, and you've spoken more concisely and precisely and about CPS Lives, and I think everybody in the audience understands our organization a bit more, but understands a little bit more about what we're thinking about the future of art and education. So I really appreciate you guys being here and participating. And for everybody in the audience, I think we'll close our auctions in 3 minutes. And thank you all for listening and participating and bidding. It's been really important so we can continue to support the artists and get into the schools to make wonderful work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Deep honor.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
See you soon at an event near you.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Soon, in person.
Exactly what I meant. It's I'm proud to know and see all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
was a great conversation. Thank you, Tony and Charles and Suzette, Kendall, Sophia. Always.
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Good night.